All right, we are coming to deal with Matthew 5:31 through 48. Actually, we go all the way through the end of the chapter on this video. Just kind of sums it up in verses 43 through 48. But what we want to do, first of all, is talk a little bit about your assignments. Remember your reading assignments. Don't forget those because they're very important in what you're doing, and keep up with your reading log as well. Make that a part of your learning process, because it will make a difference in whether you get a grip on this Sermon on the Mount or not. Then for those of you who are not in the group that has an assignment this week, you have actually the two main assignments. You also have the quiz in addition to the reading assignment. But the Wednesday assignment is for you to translate Matthew 5:31 to 42. And be sure to follow the grading rubric because that will keep you on track, and you find that in course contents and in the syllabus as well. Look for the individual assignment rubric because that's what you want to follow. Be sure to reflect your understanding of the Greek in your translation. You don't have to write down the parsing as we've said, but you do need to make sure that you're looking at that and that you're able to apply what you understand about the language, the grammar, syntax, and so forth in your translation as well as in your exegesis. And you're going to use the same passage on Saturday night. You'll do an exegesis. We'll talk about that in a moment, and some other things that go along with it. So when you get that done, post that in assignments following the instructions that you have in the PowerPoint. Be sure to follow the PowerPoint as you do your work, because that gives you specific instructions. The Saturday assignment includes phrasing, and then you'll want to do an exegesis. Remember that you do that a little bit differently when you're doing the individual than the group does, but it is important, and so you want to be sure to follow the grading rubric on that as well. And then you want to do a sentence outline. Remember that it's complete sentences, and make sure that it comes from the text and use it there as you go through your work, following again the grading rubric and following the instructions in the PowerPoint. Then you also have the responsibility on Saturday of posting a response to the group project for this week. There's a group working this week, and so you'll need to post that following the instructions that are given in the PowerPoint. The group has assignments, specific directions in the PowerPoint as well. The difference is the group is going to be turning in one assignment, but it is a collaboration. It's the same material. You do the translation. You do, make sure that you're using the grammar and syntax, parsing, and so forth in your translation and in your exegesis. But once you do that, then you will phrase it, and also you will do an exegesis. It's a more detailed. Follow the grading rubric again here, and follow the specific assignments in the PowerPoint as well as you go through that. And then do your collaborative sentence outline. That's the important thing. Two things that are extremely important here. One is that you collaborate, and the second is that you participate in the collaboration. It looks like we've had a pretty good response in the collaboration. That's good. I appreciate that. But I want you to keep growing in that. So as you do these additional ones, this is the first one for this group, but as you do additional ones, you will also grow in it and get better at it. So do that. Don't forget to follow the instructions then in the PowerPoint, and as you do that, you will be able to you'll be able to do exactly what you're asked to do. All right, let's turn a little bit to look at the text if we can. I hope you're reading the text along with it and that you are certainly following that text. So I want to remind you what Jesus has said. He said our character is based on our relationship, and that our relationship demonstrates itself in the focus that we have on Him as we listen to Him and as we follow Him. He's told us that our righteousness comes from Him and that it must exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees. This happens only when we're joined to Him and when we're working with Him. Sometimes people try to make God fit their mold. And when we do that, we find ourselves explaining His teachings according to what we think rather than according to what He thinks. And so the question that we have to ask is, which do we obey? Do we obey what He said, or do we obey what we say He said? And then what we need to do is make sure we're paying attention to the text and listening to Him. Do we try to change His teaching, or do we allow His teaching to change us? The latter is what He wants us to do. So Jesus is still teaching us about causal attitudes. He's not talking about the symptoms. He's talking about the cause. He talked about the law, anger, and murder. He talked about lust and adultery. And what he says is that our attitudes, when our attitudes are transformed, then our actions change. So hate leads to murder, but when hate is dealt with, then murder is taken care of, and we don't engage in that. Same thing is true with lust and adultery. Lust leads to adultery, but if our attitude is transformed, then adultery is not a problem in our personal relationships. So there are three more, actually, and then he sums it up by talking about love in verses 43 through 48. There are three more here. The first one is, he says, unfaithfulness leads to broken relationships. Again, notice he treats the symptom, talks about the symptom, but then he gets down to what the cause is. The cause is broken relationships. And the second one is compromised integrity leads to broken words. Our words are no longer good if we allow ourselves to compromise our integrity. And then the third one is selfishness leads to retaliation. Then, of course, the fourth one is the summation of it in the last part of the chapter is that the only way to deal with this is through that costly forgiveness that comes out of the love that we have for one another. So in verses 31 through 32, he talks about selfishness. He talks about what our problems are. And in all three of these, he gives us three aspects of it. He says, first of all, here's what man's way is. Then here's what the law's way is. Here's how the law deals with it. But here's God's way. Here's what God wants you as a kingdom citizen to do as you work through this. Man's way, for instance, in 31 and 32 is selfishness. That's we think mostly of ourselves. And when we do that, then problems come in our relationships. The law's way is to control it. He's talking about a relationship of men and women, husbands and wives here. And so if there is an attitude of unfaithfulness, that then results in broken relationships. But the cause of all of that is selfishness on our part, trying to do our own thing. The law dealt with it, as Jesus made very clear. Moses gave them the law to control this situation. And that's what the law is about, is control. You control it by saying if you're going to send your wife away, then you have to give her a bill of divorcement. But Jesus said God's way is that man be faithful in the relationship. You see, your attitude is transformed from unfaithfulness to faithfulness, and the result is not a broken relationship, but a right relationship. So what does he mean by this? He says God intended a man and a woman to enter a permanent relationship. 1 + 1 = 1. Because there is a coming together, a union, a sharing, so that the two become one. And any deviation from God's plan is a sin. Let's not be afraid of this. Let's recognize this, that any deviation from God's plan is a sin. Divorce is a sin because it's a failure to do God's will and live up to God's standard. But let's also remember that God does forgive sin. And this is not the unforgivable sin. There's still consequences. Relationships are broken, and the implications of broken relationships end up being harm that come to the lives of others, to the wife, to the children, to all the family that is involved. Second part that he talks about here is the call to integrity in verses 33 through 37. And he's talking about speech here, saying one thing, but not meaning what you say and not living that out. And of course, he says that man's way is just say anything. Just again, it's selfishness. You think about the way you want to do it, and you do it that way. The law's way is control it. Let me find a way to do this in such a way that I can explain it or that it can be justified, at least in my mind. And so we say, all right, if we're going to make vows, let's don't make false vows. If we're going to make vows to God, let's fulfill the vows to God. But he says God's way is don't make vows. No swearing, no oaths. Don't swear on heaven, don't swear on earth, don't swear on Jerusalem, don't swear on your own head. Just live a life of integrity, because we do not need to support our word if our word is true. If we are living faithfully in him, in relationship to him as a kingdom citizen. So just say yes or no, and let your yes be yes and your no be no, and anything else is evil because it is a sin. And then the third one is the call to a costly forgiveness, and that's in verses 38 through 42. Again, man's way is unlimited retaliation. If you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you more. The law's way is to limit that. That's what the law did. It said if somebody takes your eye out, you can't do any more to them than take out their eye. If someone breaks your right arm, you can't do any more to them than break their right arm. But then God's way, and here's what Jesus changed. He changed the attitude, you see. He changed the attitude that we have towards each other. It transforms that attitude. And so he says there is no retaliation at all for kingdom citizens, not even standing in resistance. Examples, if somebody strikes you, don't strike them back. If somebody sues you for your coat, give them your outer garment, your cloak as well. If somebody compelled you to go a mile, as a Roman soldier could do, then you go 2 miles with him. If someone, just be willing to give, be willing to lend. And all of this, he is emphasizing the causal attitude that is based on a forgiving love, just like he loved us. And that's the summation of this, that forgiving love that makes it possible. Put others first. Don't let other people's action determine your action, but let your action be determined from the inside, that transformation of attitude in you that God in Christ has done for you. So the kingdom citizen's attitude, his lifestyle is a costly lifestyle. And so we say, well, but yeah, that's pretty costly. That costs us a lot. That's really tough, isn't it? But think about Calvary when you think about this, and understand the love that God has for us and the sacrifice, the costliness of his forgiveness that he was willing to make. And then let's practice that in our own lives as well. So don't miss the fact that he's talking about the transformation of attitude, and that's what makes the difference.